I'm Rick Albert, and welcome to The Key to the City of Angels, the podcast where we unlock the secrets of Los Angeles real estate. With over 300 real estate deals under my belt, I've seen it all, from house hacking strategies that build wealth to helping clients close multi-million-dollar deals in one of the most competitive markets in the world. Every week, I'll bring you expert insights, market trends, and inspiring success stories to help you navigate the LA real estate scene. Whether you're a first-time buyer, an investor, or just curious about what it takes to thrive in the City of Angels, this podcast is your guide to making smarter decisions and achieving your goals. So grab your keys. It's time to unlock your path to prosperity in Los Angeles real estate. Hello, everyone. Rick Albert here, the host of The Key to the City of Angels. Welcome, welcome. And today I have Valley famous, fair enough, John Laforme of Housing Authority, or home inspector. And then you also do have your own podcast, which I've been on, Buying a Home, Don't Panic.
Right. Home Inspection Authority is the company. Yes. And yes, my podcast is Buying a Home, Don't Panic. And yeah, this is going to be, I'm just telling you, this is the first podcast I don't have to edit. So that's great.
We'll see.
We'll see about that. But anyway, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it. Yeah. And I'm anxious to answer your questions to help out your listeners and stuff like that. So what do you got? What do you want to talk about, man?
Well, I actually want to know, how'd you get into it? What made you wake up in the morning? I want to crawl underneath the house as well as on top of one.
Well, I didn't wake up to say I want to crawl under a house.
Okay.
Doing manual labor for a lot of years in the construction business was something I was over with. And so, I flipped a few houses that I actually lived in. So I didn't flip them fast. I flipped them over years and then sell them and bought another one. So I did stuff like that. And then one day I was like, maybe a lot of people have kind of pointed me in this direction. Like, hey, maybe you should inspect houses because you know a lot about them. I'm like, kind of looked into it, talked to a few people. Had to figure out who was in charge. My first question I had was, well, if I'm going to get into the home inspection business, I got to find out who's in charge, who's pulling the strings, and that in any industry, right? Mm-hmm. So after talking to a few people, I'm like, well, if I start my own company, I'm in charge. So I just make my own policies. I get my connections, I do my marketing and all that stuff. So, and I realized how much can be made. First I was looking at how much can I make? And then I was like, well, there's more to it than just home inspections. There's add-ons, there's sewer camera inspections, there's becoming a mold inspector. There's a lot of things you can add on as a home inspector. So it's a lot of services people always want. So when my phone rings for a home inspection, the second question is, can you do my sewer line too? Okay. So when I first started, I didn't have $20,000 worth of sewer equipment. So I used to sub it out to a plumber, but that turned into a nightmare and it got worse over time. So I said, I got to make a choice here. Now my customers know me to do this. So now I kind of put myself in a corner. So I'm like, okay, now do I bite the bullet and make the investment? I finally did. And I'm glad I did. So I don't have to rely on this other person anymore and I can just do it myself. So that's kind of, if I'm falling off track here, but your question was, how did I get started? That's how I got started. And I just kind of grew it from there. It's been about 11 years now.
Right. Yeah, I will say I remember when I first got into this, one of the biggest challenges was I would have to call 10 different people to do 10 different inspections.
Right.
And then to try to, because what people don't understand what happens behind the scenes is you're coordinating between 5 different parties. You have a listing agent, buyer's agent, buyers, sellers, and then whatever inspections you want done.
Yeah.
It's juggling it. So to make one call or 2 calls or 3 calls, okay, I can do that. But when I, back in the day, had to make all these phone calls, it's this is exhausting.
Yeah. And if one person falls out of the loop, first thing people need to know, your listeners need to know, is when it comes to inspecting a house, the main person is the general home inspector.
Right.
That is your focus. So you want to get him in there or her in there first, because they're going to point out whether or not you need specialists, like a roofing specialist or a plumbing specialist or a heating and cooling specialist or a foundation specialist. or whatever, so or chimney specialist. So that's the first place to start, always with the general. I highly, highly suggest you schedule sewer the same time as the general. So if your general inspector doesn't do it, get someone who will come do the sewer line as well at the same time. The reason for that is a simple sewer repair is going to cost you probably $1,500 to $2,000. And that's just for a basic spot repair. What that means is digging a hole to the pipe, cut, and then replace that little damaged section. That alone is going to cost you at least $2,000, I would say. So for a couple $100, you can get the pipe inspected to let you know the condition it's in the same time you're doing your home inspection. That's priceless. The value of that is crazy, because I've done so many sewer lines where you can't even get into them, or maybe get halfway into them and they're totally collapsed or full of roots. And then, hey, look, you're looking at probably a $10,000 to $20,000 credit to get that fixed if the homeowner doesn't want to deal with it, that's selling the house. So it's super, super important to remember to do the sewer inspection the same time as your home inspection.
I've noticed majority of the time, I don't want to make any promises, my clients end up spending probably about $1,500 in inspections between the general, sewer, chimney, mold, and termite.
Yep.
Majority of the time, we get that money back in the form of a credit, price reduction. So it's like, and I've told clients, like, oh, I don't know if I want to spend that much money. I'm like, look, worst case scenario, you find all these issues. Best case scenario, there are no issues. And look, you spent $1,500 to find out there's no issues. Because there's people you inspect. When we first met, the house you inspected for me the very first time, that seller had bought it during one of the hottest markets in history, like in 2021. He hadn't done any inspections. So we found all these surprises and we reached out to the seller. The agent's like, the seller had no idea because it was such a crazy time back then.
Oh, yeah.
People were waiving all that stuff, which I'm very fortunate. I never had to waive the inspection contingency.
Yeah, back then I was coming in after they bought the house to inspect it.
Right? It's like
that's what was going on.
Yeah,
it was absolutely insane during COVID.
And then even today, with a lot of new builds in these communities, they don't even allow an inspection contingency because they're just like, oh, well, the house is brand new. There's a warranty. I'm like, yeah, but you don't. What if something was done incorrectly? Oh, well, you just do a home inspection after the fact and then just send us a list. Like,
I guess that's one way to do it.
Yeah,
if they're gonna fix it, that's okay, I guess.
Yeah, because we sold a new construction home when I worked with this developer, and they were building like one-off homes. Right. So it wasn't these communities. And it ended up being that when they installed the drywall, they pierced a pipe with the nail. And it was actually mold.
Yeah.
It's like
new construction, right?
Yeah, new construction.
Yeah,
I've actually could happen.
Yeah, I've walked into a new construction townhome, a 4-level townhome before, and there was actually mushrooms growing on the bottom of the wall.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that I've not seen.
That's why it doesn't matter if it's 100 years old or 1 year old or just it was just built. You got to get it inspected because a lot of things just get overlooked. And so it's just a good point to don't assume new means correct, because it doesn't. Right. It's all about the builder and who does the work. At the end of the day, the quality of materials doesn't matter if it was installed wrong. It's just how I look at it. Yeah.
And you brought up something interesting. It doesn't matter, the age of the home. Because I read this a lot in like investment forums, like, oh, should I avoid homes that were built in the 20s versus focusing on the 80s? I'm like, well, I'd rather buy a home that was built in the 20s that was completely remodeled than a home built in the 80s that hasn't been touched. Right. It's like, it's really because of the framing. It just was never really torn down.
It's a matter of choice.
Right. So I'm kind of curious because homes are getting older, right? It just happened.
Every day.
The average age in the valley is probably 50s, right? 1950s. Homes on the west side on average is probably honestly 20s or 30s. I just toured a 1939 home today in Sherman Oaks.
Yeah. In the 1990s, a lot of stuff was going on in like Santa Monica and all those areas too. So the 90s, so a lot of stuff went up there, Pasadena, all over. It's just kind of sporadic. It's all over.
Yeah, it really is.
Where a lot of homes were built in the 1990s. So as far as the age of a house.
Yeah.
So let me start with this. The best advice I'll give to anybody is you as a realtor, and this should go out to realtors, especially new realtors who I know are not thinking of this. Why? Because I see these people on a daily basis and they're just clueless as to why I'm bringing this up. So what I mean by that is if your client finds a house in a particular neighborhood, one of the first things you want to do is research that neighborhood and what year was that neighborhood constructed? So what year's the house? In other words, what year was the house constructed? So you should have that on your MLS listing or whatever. You should have all that at pretty accessible, and educate yourself on typical things from that era. So for example, if I know I'm going to inspect a 1950s house, I know I'm going to find cast iron drain pipe, which is original to the construction, unless the previous owners upgraded it.
Right.
Hopefully, usually it's not done. Sometimes it is. So that's something a seasoned realtor should know without question.
Right.
If I was a used car salesman, or if I was a new car salesman and you came into my lot and asked me questions about this car that I was trying to sell you, wouldn't you expect me to understand what's going on with it?
Yeah.
So if I'm hiring a realtor, I hope that realtor has not expert knowledge, but general knowledge about what's going on with this house, the year, the type of roof, before I sign off on this thing. Like, I mean, I think as a realtor, I'd want to help my customer understand what they're getting and what they're buying, not just trying to sell them the house or get them to buy the house. This is what you're getting. You're getting a raised foundation, which means you can access underneath to fix drain pipes when they leak, because they will leak eventually.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Everybody thinks these houses, just because it's been there, it's gonna last forever. I'm like, well, the framing of the house would most likely last a very, very well past your lifespan. However, and the foundation typically would too. But so the structure of the house typically isn't the problem with the house. It's the systems of the house. So basically, if you can picture a house with no plumbing in it, no electrical, no roofing, and nothing in it, what do you have? You just have a wood frame, right? So wood frame. So now you're adding plumbing, which means you're cutting holes to the wood frame and you're adding a water supply pipe that's pressurized. So what happens if somebody puts a screw through a pipe and adding drywall or whatever, you get a leak. So these are the things that are realistic that can happen in everyday life. Every homeowner, tries to hang something on the wall and they're banging a nail through the wall. The nail's this big and they hit a pipe or worse, an electrical line and they zap themselves. So things go wrong. And usually when things go wrong, it's because of the initial installation.
Interesting.
So I look at it like that. So if you can kind of separate all the noise from this and just go, well, I got a house, it's got 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It's pretty basic. It's a small house. What can possibly go wrong? If your water pressure is good on the house for your plumbing, you shouldn't have any leaks unless you accidentally broke a pipe.
Right.
You really shouldn't have any leaks unless a faucet just starts to go or something. But if your water pressure is maintained, be 75 psi or below, chances are you're probably not going to have a water leak in your house unless something accidentally got broken.
Right. When I've talked to some people, because I'll be like, hey, look, the roof's older, right? Like, and we talked about this before, it's like homes built in the 90s, we all think it's like, oh, that's young, right? Maybe it's just like an ego thing, right? Because like, well, I was born in the 80s, I'm young, right? So clearly this house must be fine. It's like, no, the house is at least 30 years old. Right. Roofs have a life expectancy of 30 years.
Windows.
HVAC, windows is a great one. I have a client who bought a house in Porter Ranch a few years ago, 90s. Since then, he's replaced the roof, resealed all the windows, actually replaced the plumbing because the builder used thinner pipe. So over time, as it shakes, as water goes through.
Type M copper.
So he just replaced all that with PEX. And it's just like, some of this stuff gets older. So when I've done negotiations, people are like, well, there's no roof leaks. I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of like a bald tire. It works, but it's going to pop.
Right. Good point. It works, but it is going to pop.
Yeah.
And the worst time too.
Right. And you watch, it's going to pop the day after we close.
Yeah.
And I've seen it happen, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure.
Yeah. My
So,
clients
a
were
roof.
doing that.
Yeah. When you're talking about, let's talk about roofs for a second. So when you're talking about a roof, I was just on a job yesterday, had a
Mhm.
great day yesterday, had a really interesting house to look at, found some really interesting screw ups in this house,
Mhm.
like really interesting stuff. I'll explain that to you later. But it was just a good day for inspecting yesterday. I just had a great day. I was just like taking my time, made a couple videos along the way from my YouTube shorts. And I was just like, wow, this house is interesting. The interior was really well done, like laid out and designed. And I mean, on the outside, it didn't look very attractive. But when you
Mhm.
walked in the front, it's like, damn, wow, look at this place. Nice
Yeah.
custom staircase going up to a rooftop patio that was leaking, by the way. So all kinds of major problems, not cosmetic little problems. This house had, I would say, three pretty significant problems that
Mhm.
was concealed that you would not have seen by just walking around and looking. I had to get in the attic and find all this stuff. But talking about the roof had a whole bunch of solar on it. And right from the street, I could see that the roof was all worn out. I could see granule loss. I could see the fiberglass and the composition shingle. And so I'm like, well, maybe it's just the front. So I get up on the roof and it was mostly the front. But I want to explain to people listening, when you have solar on a roof that has to be replaced, now you have to do three things. You got to remove the solar. That's one. Two, you got to re-roof the house.
Mhm.
Three, you got to put the solar back.
Right.
So that increases the cost of dealing with all that considerably because you have to pay someone to come back twice for those solar.
Have you heard what the going rate is? Last I heard it was around 7 to 8 thousand.
I haven't checked on that, so I'll take your word for it. Yeah,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
just
and
don't
that's just
have
what
that
I've heard
number.
from other people. It wasn't like I got a quote
Oh,
on
that's
that.
just for the solar?
Just to take the solar off and put it back on.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
I mean, that could be
Yeah,
depending what
right,
almost a third of the cost of the roof itself.
right. So setting an expectation with customers when you're dealing with that is it's really good to so that home buyers understand, well, the house has solar. Well, that's great, but what's the condition of the roof?
Right.
Was it installed the same time, 10 years ago, 5 years ago? What's going on? So back to this house I was at. So it turns out the whole roof needed to be replaced.
Hmm.
And the rooftop patio was leaking into the room below.
No.
So that's one huge project. That's removing the panels, that's removing all the shingles, re-roofing the house, and peeling up all that waterproofing material on that rooftop deck, which I couldn't see, by the way, because they had like those little wood squares they put down for like a patio cover.
Yep.
So I don't believe in that stuff on rooftop patios when there's a living area below because anything can start rubbing into that finish and that seal
Oh,
of the
interesting.
waterproofing. Like even a sharp chair,
Yeah.
like a chair with like maybe a sharp edge, it's constantly
Hmm.
being sat on and it just works its way in and it'll cause a leak.
Sure.
So when you have like a rooftop patio that's above a living area, that has to be super waterproof all the time, not part of the time, all the time.
It becomes a maintenance item.
Yes, because you're going to want to hose it off once in a while. If there's any holes in it, you're letting water inside the building. So
Right.
you got to be real careful with those. So I know they're really nice and everything, and if they're done well, they're great. But you got to be conscious of that.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. Have you noticed? Because one of the big things like is these homes are getting older. Have you noticed any change over the last, let's say, year? Like, have you been inspecting older homes more than you have in the past? More flipped homes? Like, what are
Uh,
the type of homes you've been kind of inspecting lately?
I inspect everything.
Yeah.
I inspect houses 120 years old, houses
And how are they?
80 years old. Each house has got its own thing. It's
Yeah.
all different. You can't compare a 1905 house to a 1950s house. It's just a totally
Sure.
different structure. But
Hmm.
as far as the concerns always stay the same. My customers are always freaked out over cracks in drywall. That seems to be their main focus. For some reason, they think when they walk in that house and they they sign off on that house, the house is just going to fall apart on them. It's not really the case. Most of the time when you walk into a house and you see cracks in drywall, it's just shifting, settling. As the house gets older, it does that. And we live in California. We have earthquakes.
Right.
And they can move the ground. Right?
Yeah.
We just had one the other day. And
Yeah.
it sounded like a train was coming down my street. And it went right past. I'm like, wow, that was so crazy. I was sitting right here. It was nuts. I was like, wow. I mean, I thought something was coming through my wall. That's how violent it was. How the noise was so violent. I thought something was coming through my house. No shit.
Yeah. Did you see any cracks or anything going on in your house?
My house shook a little bit, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the reason why in California we have wood framing, right? So that way it kind of shifts with it versus a brick house.
Well, I don't know for sure if that's the reason, but I don't know if that's an actual reason. I can't confirm that, but
that's fair.
Florida has all like block.
Mm-hmm.
You've been down to Florida, a lot of homes are built out of block.
Which makes sense for the weather. They don't want to change addresses because it gets blown away.
Yeah. All of a sudden you're in your neighbor's yard. But as far as wood framing, I mean, when I was on the East Coast building houses too, it was all wood framing. Everything was wood framing. It's just an affordable way to build a house. The materials.
For now.
Yeah, for now. But as far as different things with different houses, I do have customers that ask me this. Oh, are you familiar with this neighborhood? When they ask me that, I'm like, well, before I answer that, why are you asking me that? Well, I just want to make sure you understand the homes in this neighborhood. I said, well, sir, let me explain this to you. The homes in your neighborhood that you're about to buy are built the same way they are in my neighborhood. Concrete foundations, wood framing, stucco or wood siding. Mm-hmm. Nothing's different. And they just go quiet for a second. I'm like, oh, well, someone told me that I should make sure my inspector knows my neighborhood. I'm like, well, that's really unnecessary.
Yeah.
Your inspector knows what he's doing. He doesn't need to know your neighborhood. I go to brand new neighborhoods all the time. Wow, I've never been here before. I'm like looking around and go, wow, this place is nice.
Right.
I didn't have to pass a test to get into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're general home inspectors. We know what to look for. Yeah, sure. Some plumbing situations might be a little different. Like we can't find the regulator. Maybe it's attached to the city or the city's supplying the regulation control. And it's just like, we can't see it. So some neighborhoods would be like that. Some neighborhoods have a main disconnect hard to find. But other than that, it's all the same.
Because you have like basically a checklist, right? So like, hey, look, I look for all these things. So if it doesn't matter what neighborhood, it just might be in a different spot, but you still look for it.
Of course. Yeah. Yes. I have a checklist to go through on my report software. Roofing. I'm checking the roof materials, the flashings, rain gutters, skylights, if there's any stuff like that. And I work my way down, and then, siding, windows, doors. But back to your point about houses getting old, a lot of people don't know that windows have most windows have a life expectancy of 20 years.
Yeah.
And when I go into a house that's probably 12 to 15 years old is when I start seeing the typical stuff, like shower diverters that are worn out. Like the little lever you pull up to go from tub to shower, they're all worn out. You pull it up, it's spraying water out of the shower head and the tub, stuff like that. Running toilet, windows, very difficult to open. Windows should not be hard to open. They should just easily open. If they're not, they're just probably really dirty, or they're jammed up because they're broke. A lot of people don't use certain windows in their houses, but the Santa Clarita area and up that way, windows are notorious for failing. So
interesting. Because a lot of those homes were built 90s, 2000, 2010.
Yep. So once again, what's the age of the house you're trying to buy? Well, set expectations. So right now, anywhere you go, well, if the house is built in 1950, it's got original windows. Well, those are old. Those are single pane glass, most likely. No energy efficiency whatsoever. So you can kind of, nudge your client. Hey, look, you know what? Probably going to have old windows here.
Right.
Unless it says in the listing that they're all been replaced. So unless you don't have that, if you don't have that information that things have been upgraded, then expect the original stuff. I just think setting expectations is not that hard when you're buying a house. If people just listen to what we're talking about right now, it's really not that hard to set those expectations. I think it's really helpful for the realtor to know this and to pass that on to his clients. So they're not walking in disappointed. Oh man, the windows are old. Well, yeah, I told you it was built in 1950 and nothing's been upgraded.
Right.
So now they're just not paying attention to you, obviously.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, I see a lot of people get let down every day because they just walked in blind.
Yeah.
Nothing to really go on.
And it's when you say that, because literally today I was showing clients some properties and I taught them about what you talked about with the composite roofs. Hey, when it's shiny, it means it's so worn down, you're starting to see the fiberglass.
Yep.
So in case you go to open houses where I'm not with you, those are some things to look out for.
Yes.
So it's like now they know going into it, okay, according to what Rick said, the roof is actually pretty old.
Right.
Right. So they can't be surprised when they do these inspections and the roof shot.
Right. So
yeah,
it's just education.
Right.
I started my podcast 3 years ago to better educate people and just actually set expectations is how I worded it when I started it. Because every day I just see people walking in I'm like, why wasn't that person told this already? So I'm like, okay, just turn around and walk away, John. nothing you can do. But one thing I cannot do is I cannot expect people to know what I know. Right. I know how the burrito's made. Okay. All these houses. I know how these things are constructed. I don't expect my customers to know that. And there's no need for them to know that. But just if you've scoped out this neighborhood and you're not taking the time to educate yourself on, hey, well, this place all these homes were built in 1956. Just kind of get a general idea, and then you're going to know what kind of plumbing you're dealing with right off the bat. Anything before, a safe bet for you and any of your clients or anyone else listening, a safe bet to understand drain pipe. What kind of drain pipe to expect and what year home. If you're buying a home, 1980 to possibly 1985, you could still have cast iron.
Interesting. Oh, because it'd be left over before the change was made.
Yes. Yeah. There's always that overflow.
Sure. Because the materials were already purchased.
Right. Just like with asbestos. So now here's another big one. Let's talk about asbestos.
Yeah, let's do it.
The same era. So 1978 was when the Clean Air Act came in, and they said, okay, no more manufacturing this stuff, but you can still sell what you have. Wow, that made a lot of sense. That's endanger some more people, but we just stop manufacturing it so we feel better at night, so we sleep better at night.
Yeah. That was all for aesthetics.
Right.
That was my understanding. It's like the popcorn ceilings was not necessary. It was just because that was the look people liked back then.
Not necessarily. I haven't. That's not my understanding. My understanding of the popcorn ceilings is when they're putting up drywall, they didn't have to make it smooth because they were spraying it with that. And it's real easy to hide blemishes with that stuff because it's so thick. So when I tell people, if you're going to remove this popcorn, you can expect that you need to have a really good drywaller who can do smooth coat finishing and knows what he's doing to even this out, because otherwise it'd be like this.
Right.
Between all the joists, ceiling joists.
Kind of like how then in like the 90s, we had like texture just walls.
Right.
Kind of the same idea.
Not
quite to that degree.
Not to that degree. The ceiling was a lot different. Yeah, the ceiling was a lot different. I mean, in walls you had knockdowns. They're called knockdowns. The thickness, it's called a knockdown layer. It's the thickness of the coating. So some are really thick, some are real thin. Then you got now everyone goes smooth finish now. Right. Like it's called a level 4 or level 5 with drywallers. I actually had that done on my new bathroom. So that's just called a knockdown. And depending on how thick that some of them are very subtle and some of them are real thicker and just a little more, what's the word I'm looking for here? I can't think of it right now, but more rougher to the touch.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, fair enough. That's called a knockdown. But the asbestos, let's continue with that because that does freak people out. So a lot of times I have to tell people there's abandoned asbestos materials in your attic or your crawl space. So what I mean by that is somebody came along and probably installed a new furnace and took out the old furnace, and they left the old furnace exhaust pipe in the attic, which is the Transite brand, which is known to contain asbestos. And I actually went the extra mile and made a YouTube video. I actually took some of those pipes, took samples, sent them into a lab, and had them tested to prove whether or not they actually contained it, and they did.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So when I see a Transite pipe, I can say firsthand, I know that's probably going to have asbestos in it. So it needs to be removed carefully without disturbing it, and bagged up properly, and disposed of properly. So that's a very common thing. And that's just the old exhaust vent pipe. It's a 4-inch white pipe. Sometimes I'll see somebody install a brand new furnace and connect the metal pipe to that asbestos pipe. And that is a no-no.
Right.
Because that new forced air furnace, the heat is so extensive, it'll start melting the inside of that pipe. And I've seen that pipe melt and drip down onto the metal pipe. It's like a white goo all over the exhaust pipe. At first, when I first saw that, I was like, what is that? And I found out that's what it was. That was years ago. So there's some things that don't belong together, and a brand new metal exhaust pipe from a forced air furnace should not be connected to an old Transite asbestos pipe. So that tells me that just triggers something else in my head when I'm there. There's no permit.
Right, because no one was there to double check.
That's how I figure out, and I kind of come to the conclusion a lot of times, I don't think there's a permit for this. The permit doesn't mean it's wrong, but you got to check. You got to have it looked at. I see plenty of work that wasn't permitted. It looks great.
Yeah.
As long as it depends on who puts it in. So once again, it boils down to the installation. Doesn't matter how expensive your stuff is. If it ain't installed right, you're not going to get the most out of it. So stop associating new with correct.
Right. It just looks pretty.
It just looks pretty. So if you're having a major system in your house upgraded, you want to make sure you have an expert putting it in. Don't look for the lowest bidder. Have the lowest bidder do your lawn irrigation or hang your drapes in your windows.
Right.
Okay. Not put a major system in your house like your HVAC or your plumbing or your electrical, stuff like that. So you don't want to skimp on those things.
I was thinking about that today, and I was like, it's not about cheapest. It's about it's about doing the right thing, about doing it right.
Right.
And I don't have I have a client of mine, and he owns property out of state, and we were just talking about how he got this bill from his property manager because the toilet was shaking, and they put like shims in it.
I mean, the toilet was loose.
Yeah, the toilet was loose, and he's like, they put like shims in it, and he's a first-time buyer. But I'm like, if it's the shims I'm thinking of, that's like pieces of wood, like a doorstop that just they just put that underneath the toilet.
Yeah,
that's not fixing it.
No, that's something wrong there. So something's it's not mounted. The toilet flange is probably too high off the floor. And if you crank down too tight on those bolts, you'll snap the porcelain toilet. So, if that floor and that flange are not the same height, then, what he probably needs to do is take that toilet out, refloat it with something to even everything out, and then put the toilet back down so it's even.
Right.
And then bolt it down, and it shouldn't move with the proper wax ring under it,
Right. So it's like, thinking about that, what I've noticed recently is I've been seeing a lot of flipped homes. There's a lot of, I'm sure they are.
I'm an expert at flipped homes. I love how these guys try to hide stuff from me. I nail them on it every time. Oh, go ahead.
Well, like my clients just submitted an offer on a flipped home. We didn't get it. But then like in the email, she's like, by the way, don't ask for any like repairs or anything like that. I'm like, that to me is a red flag. It means your seller will not honor their work. It's just because you have multiple offers, you think you have that kind of leverage. But what I've also noticed on the flipping side, and a lot of people don't know this, but real estate, just like any other industry, there's a lot of us, but there's also not a lot of us. And word spreads if someone's known to do bad work. So what have you seen with some of these flipped homes in LA?
Well, first of all, I want to say this before I lose track and forget to say it. let's
for
talk
it.
about this thing called common sense. All right.
That's
Let's all try to
ridiculous.
use our I know we don't have a lot of that nowadays, but let's try to use it
Absolutely
right
not.
now. So here's a scenario. I'm inspecting the flipped home, and who knows who did the work? Could have been Uncle Joe, could have been the guy who actually owns the house, could have been his wife. I don't know. So I point out that the electrical work is so bad, it all has to be redone. Or I'm saying when I say in the report, the entire electrical system needs further evaluation by a licensed electrician, that is not a good sign.
Right.
So this is the next thing that happens, which literally blows my mind. I mean, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Did they really just say this? So a couple of days later, I'll get a call. So, John, the sellers said they're going to have the guy fix everything. The same guy who screwed up all the electrical. They're going to have that guy. They're saying that guy is going to come back and make it right. Does that even compute to you? How does that work? So I'm like, I am not coming back to that house to inspect it if the same guy who did that work is coming back to supposedly fix it.
Right.
You couldn't do it right the first time. I said, you cannot negotiate like that. You have my instructions in my report to my customer about this is for you to get a licensed contractor out there, not to have them send Joe Schmo back to try to correct what he did wrong. He doesn't know what he's doing. You don't, that is not good for you to tell your client. I see realtors do this all the time. Oh no, they're just going to have them fix it. No, man. No, do not do that. Now, on occasion, I'll have a realtor who's very savvy go, oh, no way. No, we're getting our own guy in there. Very few and far between when that happens, though. So that's concerning to me. So I will call my customer directly after the inspection's over and put it in their ear again. You need to have your own person come out and give you an evaluation of all this work so you know how much it's going to cost to make it correct and safe.
99% of the time, I always go for the credit. And it's for that exact reason.
Yeah.
I'm like, you have to understand, so there's this whole concept of as is sale. It's actually a total misconception of what it means. People think it means, oh, you're buying it as is, it is what it is. That's not actually the legal definition. The legal definition is once we close escrow, there is no warranty with the seller. You are buying it as is after the close. So they do the repair and then we close. If there's another issue that may have been related to that repair, it might be hard to go after the seller because the seller's gonna be like, well, no, I fixed it. Here's an invoice. You agreed to it. So it's like more often than not, you should do it. The only time you can make an argument not to is if it's like, say, new construction where it's like, look, there's actual like legal warranty, right? You have the fit and finish warranty,
right?
But you're right. Like I'm trying to sign things like, no, most of the time I have my clients do it themselves. I'm like, I'd rather you do it. You do it right. Even if it means I have to help them get it organized to get it done.
Right. So, another point to make on that is to understand your home inspector when they're giving you solid advice. So another reason for me to say the entire electrical system needs further evaluation by a licensed electrical contractor. We're saying that for a multiple of reasons. And if you follow that instruction and you get a licensed guy to come out, one, he's going to look at everything he needs to look at, and then he's going to give you a quote, which is what you really need. Because you need to know what that's going to cost to fix. This is all about. That's the home inspection is all about. Figuring out what needs help, what needs fixing, what's a safety issue and immediately and needs immediate attention, or what can just be done later. So if I say you need a licensed electrician and you actually follow through and then you call me, hey, John, can you do a reinspection? I'm like, well, why do you want me to do a reinspection? Did you call the licensed contractor? Yes. Did you hire him? Yes. Is everything working? Yes. What do you need me for?
Mm.
You hired a licensed contractor. I don't need to come back. I'm not trying to take more of your money to come out there for nothing.
Right.
I try not. I don't try to sell my customers something they don't need.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they're just like, we just really appreciate if you come by and look. We know, but we just want you to come by. I'm like, okay, I got to charge you to come back out. No, that's fine. They just want peace of mind. They just trusted me enough to say, hey, come back and just take a quick look at everything. Okay. Yeah. And I look at the invoice from the guy who did the work. Yeah. It looks like he's licensed. I can see what he did. I can go to it and take a look. And it looks generally safe. It looks like it's installed correctly. I'm not seeing spliced wires like this everywhere, So like I did on that house I just did yesterday, electrical wiring everywhere. There was, like I said, the interior of that house was so nice. But when you look at the bones of the house, it was like, oh man, just the worst contractors came through there.
And it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward, because they had passed the law where if a home was purchased within the last 18 months, that actually triggers more disclosures. And that includes actually like a vendor list.
Ah,
Because you're right. Because I had a client buy a flipped home years ago and there were some issues. And I spoke to the agent who was also the seller.
yeah.
And he's like, yeah, well, we had used handyman for everything. And I'm like, that's not great. And they came back and fixed some of it.
Doorknobs and hinges. Okay. And weather stripping. That's it. I don't mean to generalize, but there are some good handymen out there. They're very well experienced, but they just don't want to go the full contractor route. I get it.
With the insurance and everything.
Yeah. So they're just trying to do small repair, and that's fine if they know what they're doing. But I mean, the amount of stuff I see that's done by just unqualified people is just crazy.
Yeah. So on these flipped homes, it's mostly the stuff you can't see that you tend to see issues with.
It's the 5 major systems of the home that need to be inspected. So that's in any home.
Right.
But when it comes to a flip, they're usually never done to par. What I mean by that is plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and roofing. Mm-hmm. Okay. Foundations. The foundation's the foundation. If it had cracks, they might have filled it and strapped it. If not, then I just point it out. But foundation cracks are typical in most homes. So those are the major things. The electrical, HVAC, were they permitted? So what I do as a home inspector is when I see an upgrade to the house, like looks fairly recent, I make a note. Did observe an upgraded electrical system. Please request disclosure from seller if this was a permitted install. It's a great point. That's a great point for me to tell my customer. And it's a great point for the realtor to know about too. So, okay, well, who did this? Who did this work? Was it permitted? Well, first of all, did I call it out? Did I say the electrical panel looks like hell? Did I say it's not installed right? If I didn't say any of that, I'm just letting them know it was upgraded. So just ask, hey, was that permitted? Doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah. I mean, for some of these people, especially not so much on the flipping side, but on the, I call them retail side, like, just the average buyer and seller, not everyone knows what requires permits. Like remodeling a kitchen in LA technically requires a permit. There is a permit for a general remodel, but not everyone does it.
No, I don't believe in a permit for a kitchen remodel unless you're moving walls.
I agree. I don't think it's necessary.
If you're just moving cabinets or moving the sink, that's minor stuff, man.
And that's usually what I tell my clients.
Minor stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. When they're like, oh, they didn't pull permits. I'm like, yeah, but first of all, it's common, right? We don't ever really want to scare a client, but it's like, it was cabinets. It wasn't major systems, but you're right. Electrical panel. Yeah. I kind of want to see a permit for that.
Absolutely.
Because even the best contractors, mistakes happen, building codes change. That's one of the more common ones I see with contractors where they do it right, but the inspector, oh no, building codes change. You actually have to do it this way. And
there's another caveat to that. What if your client buys a house with an upgraded electrical panel that wasn't permitted, and as soon as they buy it, they decide to do some remodeling, and the city inspector comes out and goes, "Hey, did you just put this in?" Nope. Well, now you have to go file a permit for this too.
But John, isn't it inherited? Isn't it grandfathered in from the
I,
previous owner?
I don't think so.
No, it's I get that all the time. Like,
But
well, it
that,
was
yeah,
grandfathered in. I'm
but
like,
that
dude,
can
that's not a
happen.
thing.
No, that can happen though. You can trigger, you can like snafu yourself by, you know what, I'm gonna go to the city because I want to add on to my house, and they
Mm-hmm.
show up and, hey, that's, we don't have no record of this. Now
Yeah,
if that city inspector is a dick, some are.
some are.
I've had a bad experience with one already, and I had a great experience with others. But yeah, it depends on who shows up and what they say.
Tony, when we were doing the remodel on our house, depending, it would be I might have my wife come to meet the inspector. Sometimes it would be me. It wasn't always my contractor. Because sometimes the inspectors are nicer to the homeowner than they are to
Yeah,
the contractor.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh, you know how contractors are. Can you just help me out and getting this stuff straightened out? Like, oh yeah, sure, not a problem. Yeah, and we always do stuff above par, but it was just one of those where like it's just easier to work with the city sometimes that way.
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
some do unfortunately I call it playing God. They know
Right.
they know they can make your job a lot harder.
Right, but I believe in permits
So do I.
because most homeowners don't know what the contractor was supposed to do.
Exactly.
So that's the purpose of permits. So me, I don't need a big brother on my projects. I know enough to know what these guys are supposed to do, so I can manage my own projects, which I have been doing. But
Hmm.
most people don't have that ability,
Right.
and they count on the person behind to be honest and give them it straight. Here's a great story for that. I went to a house years ago, and I really felt bad for this guy. So he was the owner of the house, and he goes, you know, I really need my plumbing system checked. I'm like, okay. I said, well, I'll do the entire house for you. I'm not just going to come and do your hill. That's fine. But I really need you to put emphasis on my drain piping under the house. I paid somebody about $20,000 to replace my drain pipe. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So I went under the house and it was flooded.
Oh,
The crawl space was like almost completely flooded. Whoever went there replaced about 10 feet of 40 feet of cast iron. The rest of they left there. They only took out 10 feet of it, and he paid them.
pull them out.
That
That
40
is,
feet of 40 feet of cast iron pipe that was leaking, split,
yeah.
cracked. They replaced 10 feet of it and left the rest and told them they replaced all of it.
Oh,
And
it's ridiculous.
the contractor just disappeared. Like, I felt really bad because that guy just got literally screwed. I said,
Yeah.
sir, this pipe is not replaced. It's actually literally leaking right now in your crawl space. Here's the photos. So
Oh,
so that's the kind of stuff that can happen. And during my remodel here on my bathroom, I called multiple plumbers, and some of them were very shady. Very shady.
mhm.
So of course I didn't use them. I said, you have a nice day.
Right.
Thanks for coming by. I could just
Yeah.
tell. They give you an invoice. It says 3 things on it. Like, it only takes 3 things to replace this? Really? What about this?
Hmm.
This isn't. You should have a detailed list of what they're going to do, all the
Yeah.
components they're going to replace, what kind of materials they're going to use. Ask questions.
Yeah.
If you're hiring a contractor, make sure you ask questions. Get
Yeah.
a list
There are
of
no
materials.
stupid questions.
There are no stupid questions. You're entitled to know what materials they're going to use. If you're going to go with copper pipe, make sure it's type L copper. If you're going to
Okay.
repipe the water supply in your house, that's the better copper. The thinner copper is type M.
Mhm.
And that some plumbers call that a 10-year pipe because it's much thinner and it pits easier and it fails faster. So type L is a thicker pipe.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know.
So this typically with a residential application, you're looking at 2 different types. It's type L,
Mhm.
type M. You always want to go with the L.
Okay.
Right. If
That's
they're going to
actually
say,
good to
oh,
know.
it costs more money, it doesn't cost that much more. For Christ's sakes, a couple dollars here and there. It's like, just put it in. Yeah,
Again, do it right because
Yes.
it's going to cost you. Because especially when it comes to like plumbing and electrical, like I have clients who just replumb their entire house, and there was like 50 walls or 50 holes throughout all their entire house because they had to cut
Yes.
everywhere. So it's like Yeah, you want to make sure the right stuff's in there because that alone was 20 grand for the repipe, but you still have drywall, you still have paint. Like this could be a $50,000 job.
Sure.
Do it right.
Yes. Yeah. You're going to open up your walls once. You don't want to do it again. So no,
Right?
that's absolutely correct. So yeah, I mean that is the reality of a repipe. If you're on a slab foundation, you can't go under the house.
Yeah.
You have to go through the walls. Sometimes I've
Hmm.
seen people wrap it around the outside of the house and then
Oh
go
yeah.
in through the. Oh, that's so bad. That looks like a shack. You know what I mean? Looks like a shack when you're done. Got all this
Yeah.
insulation wrapped around your house, and I'm like, oh, this is so bad. I see it on top of roofs sometimes, and I just think it looks like hell.
Plus with the valley heat
The copper
just
pipe
beating
doesn't
down on
belong in your
that.
roof.
Oh,
Just open the walls up and just do it through the inside and keep everything inside the building. No, you can't
yeah.
have copper exposed to the sun; it'll deteriorate it. So
Hmm.
it's got to be covered or painted,
Right.
insulation or paint. I would prefer insulation be on it than paint. But
Sure.
you shouldn't have copper pipe exposed at the exterior.
That makes sense. So let's shift gears a little bit. So a great example was last year I sold a house in Calabasas and I purposefully had you come out to inspect it
Mm-hmm.
as a listing,
Okay.
which
Yes.
worked out because the buyer ended up waiving their inspection contingencies because we had all those reports.
Ah.
So
Okay.
it actually worked out for my seller because like, look, here's everything we know.
Right. Right.
Have you been seeing any changes in terms of more of these inspections happening? I call them like pre-listing inspections.
Yes, I actually have been doing. I've seen a little bit of an increase with that. A little bit,
Yeah.
not a ton, but definitely a little more
No.
than usual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
know
have
the
you?
realtor I work with has
Mhm.
been doing that with me a lot lately because he just believes in it. He just really believes. He wants to know problems way ahead. So he's just very proactive, and there's always the proactive approach to everything in life,
Right.
and this is definitely a good thing to be proactive at. Do the pre-listing inspection, and don't skip the sewer. I got people calling me. Oh, I want to know everything about the house. Okay, well the sewer is going to cost. Oh, I don't want to do that. Well, you just told me you want to check out everything in the house.
Yeah.
That's a huge dollar item. You got to check that. I'm going to say it
Hmm.
again. I'll be saying this every time I talk to somebody. Always do the sewer. You got to know what's going on underground unless you're Superman and you have x-ray eyes. I don't have that. I have a camera though, HD
Right.
camera, and it works really well if I can get into the
Yeah.
pipe. So
Have you? And I don't know if you would necessarily know this. Has anyone ever disclosed to you any work that was completed for sale after reviewing your report, or is it more of they use it just to present? Because in my case, typically, let's say like on that one house, but we knew that house was a fixer going into it,
yeah,
right? Actually, you did another one for me in Sun Valley. Same deal. We knew the house needed some love,
yeah.
just for aesthetic. So it was like it doesn't really make sense to really do repairs because like, hey, look, the house is what it is. Here's reports that prove it. That was actually another one where the buyer didn't do any inspections because of your report. So
Mm.
thank you.
Well, thanks for having me over there.
Right, no big
Happy to
deal.
help.
But have you actually, has any realtors or sellers been like, yeah, we actually did some repairs prior to listing? Because I
Oh,
would have
after
some
my
sellers that,
inspection, you mean?
correct.
Yes, and sometimes they'll ask me to come check those repairs.
Interesting.
So
What have those repairs been typically? Is it like mostly minor stuff, like a leak under a kitchen cabinet, or is it something
no,
more
I
major, like a
don't. I
roof?
try to stay away from coming back for those little tiny things
Yeah.
because of my schedule. I get so busy sometimes. It's hard for me to make time for that.
Yeah.
I got to keep my schedule open for full inspections and home sewer, mold, whatever. So I try to stay away from that stuff. But if they say, "Hey, look, we had somebody come out and do this, but we wouldn't just make sure it was right because it wasn't permitted." It could be electrical, it could be plumbing, it could be
Yeah.
anything really. HVAC. HVAC is another big item that is most of the time installed real poorly.
Interesting.
HVAC upgrades. Wow, there's a lot of hacks out there. A lot of hacks. So if I bought an old 1970s Volkswagen
Hmm.
and put brand new chrome wheels on it, is it still a 1970s Volkswagen?
I would think so.
Okay. All right. So if you're looking at a house that's got some age on it, maybe 1950s or 60s or something. And it's got the original furnace in it, but it has a Nest thermostat, which looks like a wheel, right?
Yeah. Well, then clearly it's brand new.
People see all they see is, oh, it's got a Nest. But yeah, it's connected to a 40-year-old antique.
I can install those.
That belongs in a museum somewhere. So those are things that we got to use our common sense with. Okay?
Right.
It's cosmetically on the wall. Yes, I want to see a Nest. I love Nest thermostats. I think they work great. They're easy to use. I have. And they're easy to use. So I like that. But I opened the furnace door and there it is, the old dinosaur. Oh, we got a brand new thermostat. So, but you got a brand new thermostat wheel on a 1940.
But as a realtor, I can say it's a smart home now.
Well, part of it is anyway.
I love it. I know realtors will advertise, brand new Nest thermostat. I'm like, that's a $250 piece, and I'm not handy. Like I am far from Bob the Builder, but I can install that.
But a brand new home buyer, maybe a young person, is going to go, wow. It's the aesthetics. People walk in and go, wow, look at that shiny stainless steel. Look at all that brand new windows. Look how pretty that faucet is. Wow. Look at the tile. Wow. And then behind all that is the original pipe, the original electrical, HVAC from 40 years ago. Or a lot of times they'll upgrade the furnace and the thermostat and the AC unit, but they have the original duct, which is all asbestos wrapped.
Right.
These are the reasons why you need a home inspection, because unless you know how to get into an attic and look for those things, that's where the shortfalls are. So what I mean by the HVAC being very problematic on installs is because people like you and me, we make decisions based on our finances. We're consumers. So we want something, but we don't want to overpay for it. So if the guy comes in, oh, well, ma'am, I can just install a new furnace and put out your new outdoor condensing unit and we'll just keep the original duct. It should run fine. It'll be functional. It'll turn on and off. But is it going to perform like it should if it had all new ducting that was actually sized properly for the house with the new system? Nowadays, the ducting is bigger. So you get more airflow. Now your return grills are bigger. And the bigger the return grill and the bigger your registers, the less noise it makes. Makes it nice and quiet. Ever walk into a house and turn on the thing? It's like, you hear that thing sucking down the hallway, right? It's because they probably put a brand new forced air furnace in that old furnace closet with the original return size. They didn't increase it. I always say take those hallway furnace closets if you're going to put the furnace there, but run your return through the ceiling and get rid of the ones on the bottom, because you can put a much bigger one in the hallway ceiling. Yeah. And it makes it run a lot better. So it's going to move air better. That's just been my experience. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And this is why we do inspections.
This is why. So these are the bigger things. So when all your potential clients out there, or anybody listening right now, just remember, don't get lost in the aesthetics when you walk into a house. Ask questions. Is the HVAC system upgraded? Now, here's where the lost in translation comes in. Oh, yeah, there's a new air conditioner. People automatically think, oh, it's got a new air conditioner. So they think everything is new. We still got the 40-year-old furnace, but we got a 1-year-old outdoor unit. That's what that means. That is not a new system. That is part of a new system. Those are the questions that have to be asked. And I think those are the ones that often get overlooked because people don't know how to ask the right questions. Same thing goes for plumbing. So oftentimes I'll show up, listing agent might be there. Oh, they replaced all the plumbing under the house. You mean the water supply and the drain pipe? I'm not sure. So now they're not sure. I asked them one question. Now they're going backwards. I'm not sure. I'm like, you're not sure if it's drain pipe or water supply? No, I'm not sure. Now that you say it like that. So see what I mean? It's
Yeah.
you got to know the right questions to ask. So if you go into a house and they say, "Oh, it's got a new air conditioner," well, is it new ducting and furnace as well?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the right questions to ask.
Sure.
I see. I listen to people when I'm in the houses. I listen to the conversations,
Yeah.
and it's always the same problem. It's the communication's gone. There's just
Yeah.
no correct communication with asking the right questions between two parties. It's always the same thing, and I just have to go. I'm going to go in there and inspect the bathroom now.
Right.
I'm like, because I get in these middle of these conversations, I'm like, I got to leave now because I'm saying this, it's going in one ear, out the other, and
Yeah.
under the floor and over the roof, and no one's listening to me. So I just walk away and I just go back to what I was
It's one
doing.
of those things where when people have asked me that, I
Yeah.
tend to sometimes answer it broadly because you're right. Like, I don't know if every single pipe's been replaced or the waste lines.
Right.
So sometimes we do the inspection reports ahead of time. So then, like, look, we have all the inspection reports. People then ask for them. I say, hey, you'll get it during the counteroffer stage. I don't like giving it actually up front. I use it as a negotiation tool because if they've submitted an offer, now they're emotionally invested in the property.
Sure.
So dealt with disclosures and all that, but I always try to like basically punt it to an inspection report or just say, hey, look, this is what the seller told me. It's like, yeah, some plumbing, not all. It's up to you to inspect.
But
Because I haven't.
but you got to specify when you're talking about plumbing, just make sure everyone's on the same page with water supply or drain.
Mm-hmm.
That really messes people up.
Yeah.
They don't have that separation of the two. They're two different things. One's pressurized, one's not.
Right.
One can leak. Well, actually, technically, they both can leak, but one's pressurized leaking. That's much more damage.
Sure.
So that's something to just kind of put some clarification on.
Fair enough.
But it's same with the HVAC too.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap this up, what do you see? What do you think is going to happen? This is total predictions, and if you want, I'm willing to put $1 on this. What do you think is going to be happening for the rest of 2025? Like, do you see? Is there something that you might think might be happening differently based off what you've been seeing, people you've been talking to, from an inspection perspective?
You mean as far as buyers or inspections?
We'll say as
Or
far
sales?
as, yeah, inspections. Are you, from what you've been seeing, hey, I've been seeing a lot more homes that have been in actually better shape in the past. And so we might see that, or it's like, no, I think we're going to run into a lot of issues going forward because these homes are just getting older, X, Y, and Z.
To answer that best, I don't see a change.
Okay.
I don't see a change with that.
Totally fair.
Every house has its own challenges. And
Yeah.
unless we're in a track home like neighborhood with every house is exactly the same, you really can't compare those. You really can't. There's nothing to compare to. Because one day I'm working on a hillside home that's built in 1950. Next day I'm in Santa Clarita doing a slab foundation home that's built in 2005 or something like that. So there's really nothing to compare it to unless you're doing the same thing every day. But like I said, to end this, it's always keep in mind, it all comes down to how the installation was originally done.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get longevity out of your equipment and everything else. And I think if you're hiring the right people, you'll have less problems.
Mm-hmm.
You may pay more upfront money to get the right person.
Yeah.
Some people like to go cheap and then they do it twice.
Yeah.
Guess what? You paid twice. So
right.
I think some people make bad financial decisions with certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I have friends and family that do this all the time. And I tell them every single time, you're going to regret that. Sure enough, they regretted it.
Yeah.
So pay the right person for the right service and you should be okay. But like I said, we talked about a lot of stuff, so we're kind of all over.
Yeah.
I hope it was helpful. Hope everybody.
It was.
Yeah. I hope you got something out of it.
I did, and then hopefully other people do. I mean, it was great information. So, John, how can people get a hold of you?
They can go to if you want to just talk to me about home inspections or maybe schedule one or a home, sewer, or mold inspection, you can go to my website, which is homeinspectionauthority.com, based in Los Angeles, Southern California. And I do have a YouTube channel, which I have a lot of interesting videos or my daily findings at home inspections, as well as I do a lot of how-to videos, how to do this, how to do that, which a lot of people like. And you can find that on YouTube by going to Home Inspection Authority on YouTube, or you can just type in my name, John Laforme. And then I do have a podcast, audio version only, which is on all the podcast platforms, called Buying a Home, Don't Panic. And there's video versions of that on my YouTube channel as well.
Great. Well, thank you, John, for being here, and I appreciate it. And I'm sure I'll see you soon on one of the inspections.
Yes, sir. All right, Rick Albert.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon. Thanks, man.
Talk to you soon. Bye. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to The Key to the City of Angels. I hope you found today's episode helpful as you navigate the world of Los Angeles real estate. Whether you're looking to buy your first home, expand your investment portfolio, or sell in this competitive market, I'm here to help you succeed. Let's connect. Visit my website or follow me on social media to learn more about how I can help you achieve your real estate goals. And if you're ready to take the next step, don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to work with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might benefit. Together, let's unlock your potential and make your real estate dreams a reality.